Hello, welcome back to the channel. We're going to do a bonus quick tip. I guess I'm in a teaching mood, so I was just thinking about this subject for some reason, so here we are. So this video is going to be both for anyone who's considering maybe hiring a personal trainer for the first time or something similar, or also for people that are maybe kind of thinking about starting a career in the fitness industry. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both. The advice I'm going to give is going to be kind of both. And if you're on this channel for the first time and you don't know anything about me, I'm basically a strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, however you want to phrase it. I started training in the summer of 2000, so I've got a little over 20 years experience training people, not just in like the fitness business, but actually like training people. So I'm not a sales guy. Not a manager, I am a strength coach. So, if you're getting into the fitness business and you want to know career tips for being a better salesman, this channel's not for you. That's definitely not my thing. Anyway, so just some things to think about. So I know when people hire a personal trainer, no one really knows how to interview a trainer or kind of like what to expect. And you just go into a gym expecting that the person you're getting set up with is knowledgeable, has your best interest at heart, and is going to do the best job they can. And a lot of personal trainers, I know they get into the business with good intentions and then they just don't know what to do. So I know when I started training people 20 years ago, when I got my first client, I had no idea what to do with them. And it was a shock for me. I didn't think that was going to be a challenge, but I was used to being around very athletic people. My background is in, I was a bodyguard, and I taught self-defense, so I was used to being around, pretty athletic people, special forces guys and that sort of thing, SWAT guys. And then I got my first client, I did his assessment, the guy could only do 7 push-ups, then he collapsed, and I had no idea what to do. I didn't know what he needed. I figured that out over time, but it was a process. So I went into the career very unprepared. I thought I was prepared and I was not. So just some basic things. If you are, again, starting this whole mess, if you're a client, your program that you're following should be designed for you, based off you, and it should be kind of centered around you. It shouldn't be a cookie cutter thing that everyone in the gym is doing. Now, that might be a little bit too broad of a statement. A lot of trainers will use templates, and I don't have a problem with that. I use templates. So like I have a template for a certain strength quality I'm trying to improve, and I will modify that for the client depending on like how long they've been working out. It's called training age and various things, what kind of equipment they have, so on and so forth. What I never do, ever, is like on, say, Monday, for example, every client does the same workout. I don't like that. I don't do that. I've seen that a lot, but this is not good programming. So, and again, if you're a trainer, if you're training that way, stop that. Okay, figure out how to write programs. It's just lazy. It's not that hard to figure out program design. There's a learning curve, but you can learn how to do it. I will say that typically when I start a new client, that first program might be very general because sometimes it takes a little bit to kind of figure out what somebody needs. Some of that is physical and some of that's communication. So again, going back to early in my career, remember I had a client who he did some kind of introductory thing where he paid for a couple weeks and we worked out a few times and we finished his last session and he was hoping his insurance would pay for him to continue to train, which it didn't, and I didn't think that it would. But what he explained to me at the end of the last session was he was going to go to his insurance company or something like that and asked them if they would pay for him to continue to train, and he wanted me to detail everything I'd been doing for his back pain. I had no idea the guy had any back pain. From this point, he goes on to tell me this horrible story about this car wreck he'd been in, and he was literally getting He was getting soft tissue work on a daily basis, I think. It was crazy. And I had no idea he was in pain. Now, I could tell he was elderly and not real spry, and he wasn't moving real well. Okay, but I didn't. I think at this point in my career, I probably would have picked up. I'd probably pick up on something like that better because I have a lot more experience just seeing how people move. But when I was starting out, it takes some practice to watch people move and kind of figure out what's going on. It's not a natural skill. Communication, however, is something that should have taken place. So when I had my initial conversation with this gentleman, we didn't get into, I guess we didn't get into his injury history. Anyway, so part of the point to that particular story is if you're on the client end of it, you want to make sure you're clearly communicating to whoever you're dealing with any kind of injury history that you have. And that means, like, if you go into a typical kind of a gym and you talk to like a general manager or a sales guy or whatever, and they set you up with a trainer, and you tell that guy your story, you need to be prepared to tell your story again, because that salesperson probably is not going to pass on detailed information to the trainer, okay? Even if they are interested in that or whatever, most of your salespeople, they don't really speak trainer language. They're not going to know what they're not going to really understand the information the trainer needs to get. They might be able to explain, like, okay, this person was in a car wreck or they fell down the stairs or something like that. But if you go into a lot of detail about what happened, just be prepared to tell that story again. On the training side, learn to ask questions and don't just kind of take it for granted that people are like healthy and spry, regardless of their age. So, all that to be said, a lot of times when I start somebody that's new, their first program might be sort of generalized because if I'm watching somebody, I'll get a better idea of what they need as we go. And as a trainer, you should constantly be evaluating the needs of your client. That should be like almost really like kind of a moment-to-moment thing. Definitely from program to program. So, some other things that you should expect as a client and the trainer should be doing. One, I gotta just kind of get this off my chest, I guess. If your trainer is doing anything on their cell phone other than like recording your data, that's garbage, okay? And if you're training people and like answering the phone and sending text messages and similar things, that's like, go sell cars or something. Get out of my business. Get out of my industry. That's garbage training. Now, I do understand that a lot of trainers are using apps to train clients, and that data might be on your phone, and I get that. And I've had to use my phone before to time rest periods and different things. Sometimes you can't get around it, but if you have any other option, whether it's using a tablet or even just writing things down, it looks a lot better. And that's something you have to understand, because like your client might totally understand that what you're doing on your phone is all about them, if that's what you're doing. But other people in the facility that are watching you might not understand that. So just keep that in mind. Look as professional as you can. And along those lines, the trainer should be recording everything that you do. So things should be planned out in the first place. There should be a plan. Okay, it shouldn't just be based off of like what's available that day. There should be a plan. That should have been planned like prior to you showing up at the gym. And the trainer should be recording all the reps, all the weights that you use, and everything. That's part of how you make progress. So that goes for both the trainer and the client. Like, if you're not recording data, then you're just kind of guessing. And if you as a client ask the trainer about that, and they kind of say like, "Oh, I got it," that's a pretty strong indication that most likely every person they train that day is doing the exact same thing. So, hire somebody else, or maybe encourage your trainer to improve. Learn how to write programs. Rest periods should be strict. Now, you can do a lot of different things with rest periods. They can be long, they can be short. It depends on the strength quality you're trying to improve, but they shouldn't be random, okay? So there should be some kind of timing process going on. This was something early in my career. I didn't have a stopwatch or a watch, so I didn't time them. Kind of guessed. that's really not good. You should really be timing it and be precise, because the rest period has a direct impact on how your client's going to respond to the exercise. So both from like if the rest periods are short, if you're going for some kind of metabolic response, whether it's building muscle or burning fat or both, the rest period is going to determine if you have a hormonal response to exercise, okay, or if you have a metabolic response, or if you have a neural response, or if there is no response at all. Side note, as a story, at a place I worked at a few years back, I was training a client that I trained for several years, and we were just kind of doing our thing. There was another trainer there training their client. I didn't say anything about this, but I took my client outside to do some conditioning, and he told me that he had noticed that the other trainer had gone for 20 minutes in between sets with their client because they were chatting. Now there might be some times with the client where they might be going through something emotional and need to talk. That may happen. If that does happen, you should maybe like take them off the floor into a conference room or something, or some kind of office. Don't do that on the floor. In this example, that wasn't the case. They were just talking, and that was just kind of how they normally trained. So just be wary of that on both ends. You know, it's fine to have conversations, but if you're paying for the service, you should be getting a good quality workout. And if someone is paying you, and I realize a lot of personal trainers feel like people pay them more for conversation and whatnot, but that should be in addition to the workout that they're getting, which should be focused. Now, from a programming standpoint, I'll try to simplify this a little bit. Reps are the things that people adapt to the fastest, okay? So you shouldn't always be doing exactly the same reps every single program, especially if you're in a gym that has a lot of equipment, because then you should have potential for quite a bit of variety. So if you are always doing like 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps, that's not good. So from a training standpoint, if you're writing programs, you need to learn how to train other strength qualities besides just strict hypertrophy or fat loss. If you're on the client end, you should see some variation there in the reps you do. Now, depending on your background and how athletic you are, you may not adapt as quickly as someone else, or you may adapt very fast. It really depends on where you're at in life. Regardless, there should be some change in the rep scheme that you do from time to time. So different people will do that differently. I like to change programs about every 4 weeks. I have colleagues I know that change the programs every 3 weeks. It just depends on how they structure their business. If I have clients who adapt very slowly, sometimes I'll go 6 to 8 weeks on a phase. But that's, again, specific to that client. So I'll have other clients that every 4 weeks they get a new program. And one of the things that'll change the most will be the reps. So there is that. And some things too, like on programming, I know in personal training there's kind of a thing where they'll do some kind of a structural phase, and then they might do like what they call a strength phase, and then they'll do a power phase. I've heard managers in personal training talk about that for 20 years, and I'm not fond of it. I don't see any reason for your typical client to do a power phase. I think that's kind of ridiculous. There might be some people it's appropriate for, and it might be fun, but I think you can, if it's something they enjoy, you can probably put a power component into a lot of different workouts without making it a whole phase. And the reason I have a problem with it is, and trainers will understand this, is because by the time you get done with that phase, you've completely detrained probably what you did in like the first phase and the second phase. And it's, so I tend to alternate between accumulation, which is volume, and intensity, which means percentage of load. So basically I go from, another way to put that is I work on the horsepower and then I work on the gas tank. I'm sorry, this is backwards. I work on the gas tank and then I work on the horsepower. So I work on like the work capacity, work on the volume, and then we'll switch to heavier loads basically. And then I'll go back to volume, and I just kind of rotate those back and forth. And if am working with a client who needs a power component, that will happen in the intensity phase. So, or phases, depending on how long I'm working with them. Let's see, the last couple things I'm going to say. So just make sure you're training different strength qualities from phase to phase, not necessarily in the same workout. But if you're, so again, on the client side, if you're kind of looking at what to expect, you're going to identify this by the repetitions you're doing. So, and if you see like a lot of repetition differences in the same workout, I should kind of say that, I have very specific views about how training should be done. There are other ways to approach the subject that are fine, that are plausible, so on and so forth. So you might want to take a little bit of what I say with a grain of salt, just because I come from a strength and conditioning background. I do have real specific views on things. It's not necessarily the only way to do things, but from one phase to the next, you should see a difference in reps, especially in like what we call the A series exercises. That's really the key thing, is the first 1 to 2 exercises you do. That's where you should see the most difference from one program to the next. Then the exercises you do after that, those supplemental exercises, those might be a little more general, and that's okay. But those first 1 to 2 exercises should be, from one phase to the next, you should see different things there for sure. Let's see here. And then just some kind of, to wrap it up, just some kind of details. If you're a trainer and you're dealing with clients, your client needs to have a very clear idea of what to expect as far as like when they need to show up for their appointment, what they need to do before the appointment, and when they actually need to be ready for you. And that's the same thing on the trainer side. So like that conversation needs to happen. If somebody has an appointment at 2 o'clock, the client needs to understand if they should be warming up before 2 o'clock, like is the trainer like ready at 2, or is the trainer's expectation that at 2 o'clock that client's going through some kind of a warm up, and they're going to be ready to meet the trainer at like 2:10 or something like that. All those things can be fine. It just depends on the structure and what the arrangement is, but the communication needs to take place, so that's not a gray area. There's an area with a lot of questions. And as far as if you're considering hiring a personal trainer, you're looking at getting some help, and you're kind of trying to figure out like what kind of questions to ask, I think a lot of people are sort of prone to ask what someone's background is and potentially like what their education is. I've talked before about how when I got into training, most trainers did not have college degrees, and now that's normal, which has been interesting to watch that change. But I think a better question can be ask someone why they got into training, more than like what their education is or what their background is, because you'll find people in training that have all kinds of different backgrounds. I mean, I've known people who, like when I started training, most of them were people that liked bodybuilding. Now you've got all kinds of stuff. You might, like I've known people who, they had been engineers prior to get a personal training degree, or not a degree necessarily, but a certification just because they liked the subject. All kinds of things. I mean, I've known all kinds of people that were just, that got into it because they liked it. So I think more than, it's fine to ask what their background is because that can be interesting, but ask why they got into personal training. That'll give you a better idea of kind of like what might be going on there. So, especially if you're in kind of a interview process and you're trying to figure out if you want to hire somebody or not, asking like why they got into it you can learn a lot from that. And if you're training people, that's something you should understand for yourself. Like, why did you get into training? Or if you're coaching kids or something like that, like why? And if you're just doing it because you didn't know what else to do, that's a lousy reason. So you either need to get passionate about it or figure something else out. Don't bloat this business. So, okay. I could say more, but I just wanted to give some quick ideas about what you should expect if you hire a trainer, as far as like if it's a good experience, and then as a trainer, if you're either in the business or looking to get into the business, some things you can think about to kind of set yourself apart. So the big ones for me are, the programs should be planned. I'm not saying that I've always been great at that in my career. Okay, in the early years, I made a lot of mistakes. Punctuality is not my superpower. I kind of did a lot of programs on the fly because I didn't really understand program design, a lot of things. But we learn, we grow, you get better. So doesn't mean it has to be perfect. You just need to be small continuous improvements add up. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope everyone has a safe and productive week. Get out there.